I mean, the offense should be better. She mentions that there. That will help the defense statistically. If we're talking about trying to project where these guys will end up, the offense being on the field for any reasonable stretch of time is going to help the defense. Just, yes, field position for sure. How about just feel a little bit more rested before taking the field for a series, as opposed to watching your offense go 3 and out over and over and over again just for you to get back on the field and try to defend a 40-yard field. I mean, it was a tough spot for them consistently last year. And so, yeah, if they surprise us at all, it'll be because this is a top 5 defense, and we're looking at it and saying, boy, Christian Gonzalez is one of the best young defensive players in football. And Christian Barmore, boy, he really took off from where he left off last year as their best player defensively and one of the best young interior pass rushers in football. That's how good he was last year. They have to continue to do that, maybe even take another step forward for this team to do anything next year.
It does feel like the foundational pieces, those blue chip players and the guys that we've talked about them sort of having a lack of those players. They're all on the defensive side of the ball. Barmore, Gonzalez, all those guys that you kind of hope turn into those again building blocks for the franchise are on the defense.
They are not in a position on that side of the ball to be considered a rebuilding team. Like, this is a rebuilding organization right now. This is a tear down offensively, especially. Zoe?
Yeah, not a renaissance.
But, like, defensively, these guys are going to be looking at it and I think taking a lot of pride in their work. They were last year. That's why they were pissed off. It was going so poorly for the offense because it kept putting them in bad spots. And so, again, it's sort of everything comes back to the quarterback conversation. But if the defense is out there and the offense is not performing and they're watching Drake May light it up in practice, do they not at some point look at each other and say, can we get the other guy back out here? Because we're busting our asses defensively.
Bingo.
And we're playing pretty well. Can we put the other kid out there and see if we can actually win some of these games?
That's the delicate part of you can't fool a team. You can fool the fan base, you can fool media people. You can't fool a team. You can't fool the guys that are out there every day with him, competing, knowing what should be the guy, who the guy should be that's playing.
She mentioned Bill Belichick not being there anymore. I mean, how big of a concern should that be in terms of the defense when you still got Gerard Mayo, Covington, those guys were in the system, obviously.
I think it's massive when you're on the clock. Like, when that clock's running and it's in game now, all of a sudden, okay, pressure's on. What do you do series to series? And I don't know if they know yet.
How are you adjusting?
Gerard has a whole different amount of responsibilities as opposed to, I just got to worry about the front and backers. We're structuring to make sure we're communicating in the back end. He needs offense. He needs in-game clock stuff, timeouts, everything. Substitution patterns. Who's down? Oh, we got an injury. What do you want to do, Coach? It's going to be interesting to see how that all goes, especially early.
And I think Steve Belichick is going to be sort of an underrated loss. I don't hear really anybody talk about Steve Belichick. He called the plays.
Yeah, we did a little bit the other day. I think you're going to miss Steve. I think the question was the question the Beatle asked, who does Gerard rely on? Who's this guy?
Yeah.
I said, probably Steve. Steve was the guy.
Steve was his right-hand man, and they really led that defense.
They were inseparable. They were tight. There wasn't division between the two. And that's what's great.
And Gerard was the voice in front of the room defensively and communicating the message and the game plan. But Steve was calling the plays, and Steve was in there, and he was helping draw a lot of that stuff up. You would hear even, Matt Jones sort of in jest, kind of, but not really, complaining about, after practices where the offense didn't look great. Oh, you got Steve, staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, drawing up all sorts of, exotic looks for us to deal with in minicamp here. Kind of like rolling his eyes as he would say it. But it's because he knew and others knew Steve was a big part of what they were doing on that side of the ball and coming up with some of the creative, exotic stuff that they would do. So that is a loss. Now, DeMarcus Covington will be able to show what he can do in that regard. He's got more responsibility now, and maybe he'll be great. We've seen first-time play callers on that side of the ball come in and be awesome. Brian Flores, awesome. He's got the talent to be a really good defensive coordinator or look like a really good defensive coordinator year one. It's just we haven't seen it yet.
Tom is in Newton. Tom.
Yeah, hey, fellas, thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to kind of weigh in on some of what you guys are talking about. It just feels to me like, if you think back to when Bill was here, some of the last few years, we talk about that they got a lot of Bill guys. It's the middle of the roster. They're going to win on defense. And I know it takes time for things to change, but when I look at this team, they give Elliott Wolf the title basically after the whole offseason of coming on, the draft, free agency. Gerard Mayo's obviously a craft guy. They made him. He's beholden to them. I look at the roster. We're sitting here now still kind of talking about the strength of the team being the defense. They didn't really do anything that's bold or expensive, and I just feel like going forward it's going to be the same sort of like toothless, listless kind of operation here. And I just feel like, the team being molded in the Kraft's image here, they're not spending a lot of money. Like, if this is the new direction, I'm just really underwhelmed. I just want to see what you guys think. Thanks.
They have spent money. I will say that. I think if you look at cash spent, and now a lot of this has gone to their own guys, right?
Right.
But I think they're in the top 12 of the NFL in terms of cash spent for this coming year.
Yeah. And they're going to have the most cap space going into next year. Somebody had that projection out there into 25.
And so you could argue they should have ponied up a few extra million to make sure that Calvin Ridley wanted to come to New England, or they should have paid for Tyron Smith to even as a one-year backstop to be your left tackle. Those are the types of things you should have done, and I would be in full support of those arguments, quite frankly.
I would have done them 1 year.
But it's not like they haven't spent.
Yeah. See, I would have done the 1 year tackle thing.
You would not have
I would
done
not.
that.
I would have gone after the kid from Cincinnati. Like, at least get him for 2 years. Like, see what he is, see if he wants to be here. And then
Jonah
extend
Williams?
it. Yeah.
My understanding is they don't like him as a player.
Okay.
So he was really never even like a conversation. And he's
could
a
draft a guy
little
in the top
smaller,
10
he's a
next
little lighter, so I think there are a lot of teams that wonder if he's actually a tackle. And they know that's what
Yeah,
they
he
need.
didn't look like one, but like he was billed as one. You know?
How
And the
surprised
price
are you that they didn't address either one of those this offseason? That wide receiver or that tackle position?
The number one wide receiver or the left tackle. I mean, that's what everybody knew. They needed a quarterback, a number one wide receiver, and a left tackle. And I think it was unreasonable to expect that they would get all three. And we knew based on how the draft was constructed, this is why I know myself and others wondered if, and I know the Patriots wondered if they would try to trade back into the first round to get that receiver because they were right sort of on the cusp of where the potential number one wideouts were going to go in the draft. So there was an opportunity there for you to get your quarterback and maybe your receiver in the early 30s. They kind of just missed out on that tier. Now, maybe Polk ends up being that guy. But what I heard right after the draft from a lot of people who studied him and liked him, they wouldn't describe him as a number one. They describe him as a Jacoby Myers type with maybe a little bit more juice, or what was the Cincinnati guy? Oh, Tyler Boyd. That was the other name that came up to me. He's like that type of player. Tough, will work over the middle, dependable, game breaker, maybe not.
Hey, if you like that clip, check out more videos from Zolak and Bertrand right here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.